So you want a big adventure bike in 2026 that can do a bit of everything from off-road to quick and sporty and plenty of big touring miles in between. Well, I've ridden pretty much all of them over the past year or two, and so here we go with all of the options over 1000cc from all of the major manufacturers with the pros and cons of each. Before we get started though, a massive thanks to Breakfree for supporting the channel and sponsoring this video, and if you've ever been at all curious about this particular safety product, then of course there are links down in the description below where you can find out more. Now we'll go in price order ascending as usual, and kicking us off we've got Honda's Africa Twin, which comes in at £13,399 in the UK in its base spec. From there you can work your way up with their electronic suspension package, the DCT automatic gearbox, and then the flagship Adventure Sports version with the larger tank, more wind protection, more road biased 19-inch front wheel, and a lower slung chassis, all with the intention of making it better suited to the sort of on-road side of adventure touring. I will say though, that base bike at just under 13.5 grand does seem like a pretty good deal when you consider that you're getting the Honda build quality, the very sweet sounding and torquey engine, and also a genuinely off-road capable chassis, assuming you're already on board with the sort of dimensions of a big adventure bike, which I assume you are if you're watching this video. The only real caveat, I suppose, certainly amongst this competition anyway, is the engine with just 100 horsepower peak from its 1100 parallel twin, which I do think is enough for quite a bit of road riding, and also there's lots of mid-range. It pulls really well, it's great for off-road too. But if you are looking for a lightning quick adrenaline hit, or if you're looking for that sort of cross-continent ability with, you know, a passenger, some luggage, maybe the kitchen sink, then maybe some of the other options later on this list with a bit more power, or quite a lot more power, might feel more satisfying. Also in roughly the same ballpark though, at 13,499 quid, we've got the V-Strom 1050 from Suzuki, which either comes in an RE version, which is a little more road friendly, or there's the taller DE model with the spoke wheels as well if you want something a little more robust. Now undoubtedly it's a lot of bike for the money. You get a genuine V-twin too, and I also rather like the styling on this one, especially in the yellow and blue on the DE, with a little bit of a retro reference to it with bikes like the DR Big. But I will say, having tried the DE, I did find it a little bit tall and cumbersome, especially when you set it against the Africa Twin for pretty much the same money. It's quite a bit taller at 880mm with the standard seat height, and also the curb weight is about 20 kilos more for the DE, with the Honda coming in around 230-ish kilos fully fueled up. So out of the two, I'd almost certainly go for the Africa Twin, unless you are looking for something exclusively for the road side of things, more of an adventure tourer, in which case the slightly lower and slightly lighter RE version might still make sense. Now Moto Guzzi's V100 Stelvio probably won't stand out in any one single area in this particular list, with it making 115 horsepower peak, so good but not by any stretch the most. It's not particularly light nor particularly heavy. The chassis is decent enough for some light gravel riding, but ultimately mainly intended for the road, and it's got to be said it's somewhere in the middle on price as well. But what I will say is the V100 Stelvio is a very charming bike with the swish looks, the sweet note at the exhaust, and an engine configuration that you won't find anywhere else with the transverse or longitudinal V-twin, depending on how you like to name it. It is also quite accessible on the seat height too, at 830mm with the standard seat. You can get some neat radar enabled tech as well if you want to pay a little bit more, and so all round it really does make for a very pleasant road bike that looks the business too. And so yeah, perhaps not one for the speed freaks, probably not one for the hardcore rallyist either, but definitely one to consider if you want a touch of Italiano in your life, but either don't want to or can't afford to splash out on a Ducati. Next up though is the all-dominating BMW GS, which has outsold pretty much every other large capacity adventure bike by a monstrous margin for the past 2 decades or so. And to be fair, it's for good reason, with the Boxer twin engine being supremely smooth. It delivers oodles of torque as well that makes it a brilliant all-rounder. There's the brilliant road holding with the planted chassis, partly owing to the unusual telelever front suspension. And in the latest generations, you've got all the bleeding edge tech that you could ever need, from radar assisted cruise control to self-lowering suspension, and also their ASA or automated shift assist, which is their automatic gearbox offering. On top of that, in its current form, the 1300, I'd also say it's impressively light and sporty. They put it on a massive diet versus the 1250, and so it's one of the lowest curb weights on this list. Or if you want to go for longer distances, well, you can go for a chunkier bike with a big 30-litre tank in the form of the R1300 GS Adventure, which I'd say is a heck of a fine bike too, and it's also got masses of wind protection because of the sheer girth of it. So what's the catch, I guess? Is there anything to watch out for if you're thinking about buying a GS? Well, I will say not everybody loves the feel of the new 1300, with it feeling like a slightly smaller bike. Not everyone loves the look of it either, especially the GS Adventure with that big Lego brick of a tank. The Boxer, I think that's a bit of an acquired taste too. It's not the most exciting engine with that sort of droning sound, and also that starting price, which looks quite impressive actually on this particular list for such an accomplished bike. Well, actually, you'll find the base price is for a very stripped back version of the R1300 GS, and so if you want any of those fancy features that I've just described, you might want to get on the configurator and find out what it's really going to cost if you add all those things in. Really though, I think I'm nitpicking for the sake of balance to come up with a few negatives, because it outsells every other bike on the market by a huge margin, because it pretty much outperforms them every time in terms of the stuff that really matters for this genre of bike. And in my experience, the 1300 is no different, despite that slight change in focus. Next up though, we're over to the States, and we've got the Harley-Davidson Pan America, which is their first attempt, I guess, at an adventure touring motorcycle, unless you count this. And it's got to be said, it is a pretty good stab at an adventure bike. It's got plenty of punch from their 1250 Revolution Max V twin with a 150 horsepower peak. The handling is more than respectable on the road. It's decent enough for big adventure bike type trails off-road as well. The comfort level's really quite good, with a very cushy saddle, and also a tech package which I actually find quite easy to use. It's one of the better laid out and one of the most pleasant to look at. Then you've also got a good bit of variety in the lineup too. You've got the ST model being very road focused with a 17-inch front. You got the Special, which kind of sits in there as the midpoint. The Limited costs a little bit more for a little bit more bling. And then there's the CVO right at the top of the lineup if you want the best of the best in terms of finish, and also all of the accessories thrown in as standard. Now, I have been lucky enough to ride one on a few occasions now, and I will say on each occasion I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it really only comes up short when you compare it to something like the GS for roughly the same money. The build doesn't feel quite as good with some of the plastics in the cockpit. You've got a chain to maintain instead of getting the shaft. It weighs more and it carries that weight a little bit higher, and also the aftermarket for parts and accessories isn't going to be quite so vast, which to be fair is true of most adventure bikes. The support for the GS is really quite something because it sells in such huge volumes. Still, I'd say the Pan America is one to demo anyway, just in case it does take your fancy. And I will say I do prefer the feel and sound of that Revolution Max V twin versus a Boxer twin if you're really giving it a good thrashing. Next on the list though, we've got the KTM Super Adventures, and they firmly adhere to KTM's motto of ready to race. From the new, bigger 1390 V twin, it gets a monstrous 170 horsepower peak, which makes it the joint most powerful bike on this list. And in its road bias Super Adventure S form, well, I'd say it's quite a firm, agile, targeted bike. Quick handling, impressive for the size of it as well. And so it's certainly a bike that you can do decent mileage on, but also really give it a good spank if you do come across some decent roads. Moving up from the Super Adventure S, you've also got the option of the Evo model now. That one gets radar cruise control as standard, and also their AMT, or automated manual transmission, automatic box. But then also, if you want to go in a completely different direction, you've got the Super Adventure R. This is the off-roader with all the typical tweaks like the taller suspension, the bigger spoke wheels, and also the tailored electronics for this particular purpose. Truthfully, I wouldn't say this bike is going to feel as refined or comfortable as some of the others on this list, but it is definitely a lot of fun. And so if you do like to go quick on the road, I think the S might scratch that itch a little bit better than a GS, and the same could be said for the R in the off-road direction if you are a really capable off-road rider. Sneaking over the £17,000 mark though, we've got Triumph's Tiger 1200s, which, as is often the case with these big adventure bikes, again comes in a variety of flavors. The most affordable of the bunch is the GT Pro, and it's also available in an Explorer variant, which, like the GS Adventure, gets a 30-litre tank versus the 20 of the standard bike for way more range. Then, of course, you got the Rally, which has the taller stance, the 21-inch front, the off-road bias version, and again, that comes in the Rally Pro spec with the 20-litre tank, or the Explorer with the 30. So what makes this one worth considering? Well, I will say across the board, all of them get their brilliant 1200 inline triple with their signature T-plane crank, which does offer a real snarl that I think is absolutely befitting of the Tiger name. The idea versus the previous generation Tiger 1200s was to give them a bit more of a torquey, twinny sensation in the low-end revs in order to improve off-road performance where you are looking for that sort of momentum, and I will say I do think it's done the trick. Unfortunately though, as a trade-off, moving to this kind of T-plane instead of the regular firing intervals does introduce some vibrations, which I think it's fair to say on the first iterations were a little bit of a nuisance when it came to longer distance riding. Fortunately though, since they've introduced the T-plane 1200, they have tweaked it with their annual updates. There's been some revisions to the engine. They've rubber mounted the handlebars on all models to make them a little bit more comfortable to take out some of the vibes. And so I will say, last time I reviewed it, I do think it has become a bit of a non-issue, and you can actually just enjoy the engine for all its character, and also it's got plenty of pep too. Now the finish is every bit as good as you'd expect from a Triumph. The same goes for the handling as well, especially on road. And I think the only real area where it lags behind the competition is with the tech. There's no front-facing radar, there's no automatic gearbox kind of option, which is becoming rarer in 2026, and also the suspension, which you can lower to make it easier to get your feet down at a standstill, but it does it manually with a button on the switchgear as opposed to doing it automatically like 2 or 3 of the competition. And look, I think I'd be all right with that if it was more affordable than the rest of the bikes on this list. But as you can see, it's coming in towards the top end of things. And in the US, well, it looks really expensive. In fact, it's the highest starting price of any bike I'm talking about today. And I think that's probably owing to the fairly recent introduction of tariffs. Still, the engine is a peach, blisteringly quick as well. And so some of you, if you like a really unusual engine like that, might still think it's worth it. I don't think any list like this, though, that's ordered by price will ever end in anything other than a Ducati, though, with them firmly setting their strategy recently on selling lower volumes of bikes, but at pretty high prices, or really high prices. You see, the Multistrada V4 is no exception, starting at well over £17,000 for the base version. In fact, it's almost 18. Then you'll pay over £21,000 for the upspec S version, over £25,000 for the V4 Rally, which is sort of like a GS Adventure competitor, so taller with a 30-litre tank, over £28,000 for the sporty Pikes Peak with the 17-inch front wheel, 34 grand for the RS, which gets a desmodromic engine derived from the Panigale, and then the RS 100, which has just been introduced to mark their centenary this year. Well, that one doesn't even have a price, so let's just assume most of us can't afford one. So is it possibly worth it then? Well, I will say if you want an adventure bike that's, comfy and capable over distance, but you want the excitement of a superbike derived or MotoGP derived V4 engine with absolutely bags of forward thrust, and it'll absolutely scream as well if you hold on to the gears, then yes, there are very few bikes that can offer such levels of excitement and comfort all in one package. The chassis spec as well is every bit as premium as you'd expect from a Ducati. The tech is amongst the best in this particular category, if not quite as advanced as the BMW maybe. All finished off in red if you so wish, with the sort of design flair that you'd rightfully expect. I mean, if I had to criticize it, it would be, the price. It's also quite a big bike, especially the Rally. But perhaps mainly for a touring bike, it absolutely drinks fuel at a fairly astonishing rate. So even from the 30-litre tank version, don't expect the same sort of range as the Tiger Explorer or the GSA, which is class leading because of their shift cam variable valve timing. But then again, this is not necessarily a truly practical purchase. In fact, it's barely practical at all to buy a £20,000 adventure bike. But if you do want a thing of beauty that goes like Billy O, then it's absolutely everything that you'd want from a Ducati. As always, I'd love to know which bike you choose, so do let me know down in the comments below. And I'll put a playlist on the screen now of all of the reviews that I've made of these bikes so you can get the full details if you so wish. Do hit subscribe if you want to see more of the latest motorcycle news and reviews like this right here on MOTOBOB. Another big thanks to Break Free for their support, and massive thanks for watching today, and we'll see you in the next video.